All right, so every day I always start with the slides. That basically tells you what we're doing today, where to find the video lessons if you're absent, and what the assignment is. So if something's confusing you, then you need to go to the slides, check them out, watch the video. Just like how I'm recording right now, I give the instructions the very first few minutes of class, so that way you know exactly what is expected. And if you're still confused, you can go to the grades tab in Schoology, because I put everything in Schoology, every assignment, whether it's a puzzle piece or like a paper assignment. And you can click on it directly from the grades tab and it'll take you to the assignment. And it'll show you what it looks like if it's a paper assignment. It will, if it's a puzzle piece, take you directly to the puzzle piece. So check that out. There's lots of missings right now, but either way, we're taking our first assessment today, so that should really drown out any missing homeworks, assuming you do good on it. All right, but the goal of the lesson that we taught yesterday was to calculate measures of center and measures of variability. So things like mean absolute deviation, interquartile range, those were like the two new ones. Mean and median, hopefully you've had experience with before, and we've kind of been doing it as well the past few days. So making sure we do that correctly too. So I did record, and I'm recording right now. It'll be linked here. And I always provide supplementary videos too, in case maybe after the lesson you're confused. I usually will find other people that explain it better. Sometimes that helps, hearing someone else explain it. Or I'll find a different way that I taught it from like a previous year. So those are all in there. The practice that you will have a little bit of time to work on in class today is the puzzle piece that goes with the lesson from yesterday. Some people have been emailing me about like what puzzle pieces do. They're pretty much all due because we've done all 5 lessons and that's all that's in there. The only ones that aren't due yet are like the quiz, which you do in class. And then I'm starting to make the ones for the practices that are coming up. So do all of them. They all have due dates. You can see it in the grades tab, and they're organized in Schoology under each date. So make sure that you're getting those done. They're usually around 5 questions. So it shouldn't be like a really daunting task. You get 2 attempts. And based on the score, that usually tells you how you'll do on the quiz. So if you're getting a low score, that's when you should probably ask questions, reach out to me. If you want another attempt, I'll give you one as long as I don't think you're just guessing. And then, yeah, we have a quiz today. So this will be later. Let's go over where we left off in the notes. And just reminding you of what we did yesterday. It was kind of squeezed in on the end of class, so here it is again. We found the mean absolute deviation. So you can organize it in a table like this, which is also in your notes. So if you can just replicate this process. Mean, how do you find the mean of something? That should also be written somewhere in your notes. How do you find the mean of something? Good. So if you didn't hear that, you add your data values together and divide by however many numbers total that you added together. Total number of values. So when I added that up, I think we got like 614. Then we have to divide by 8 because there's 8 values total, which gave us our mean, right? The deviation from the mean is how far away is it from the mean, that data value. And if you're confused, it's also written in your chart, data value minus the mean. 72 minus 76.75. All right. If it's negative, you're going to want to make it positive. But then we're going to have to take the mean of that. So take the absolute value, which just means if it's negative, make it positive. It's already positive. But remember, it's mean absolute deviation. So you take your absolute deviation and find the mean of that. So add them all together, divided by however many you added. When you add this together, you should get 16. And since we have 8 data points, our MAD was 2. All right, so all that work to get that number. And that number tells us how far the data is spread out. Now, if you compare it to other sets of data, so here's a random example. So this is different from the data that we have. If you compare it to this data, so you can see they took the sum of their data values and divided it by however many they had, which was also, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which was also 8 values. They found that mean to be 5. They subtracted data value minus mean, and then took the absolute value of whatever that value was. Now, usually, like when I do these, I kind of skip that middle step. This one. I kind of just look at it and I think, how far is 1 away from 5? How far is 2 away from 5? And then I go that way. But if you're ever confused, it's always your data value minus your mean. And then take the absolute value of it. All right, and then once you take the mean of your absolute deviation, that last column, in this one, the MAD was 2.5. So if you compare that to what we got in the example that we did together yesterday, so where we had it as 2, which data is more spread out, this random example or the one that we did together? The random example, right? So the higher the MAD or the higher the IQR, because that also measures spread, the more spread out your data is. All right, so it just gives us a value to compare and see. So questions on that? All right, then for the cool down, you have a different set of data, and now you have to find the MAD, the mean absolute deviation, and the IQR. I think that IQR is easier, so let's start with that one. What's the formula for IQR? Good. If you didn't know that, make sure it's written on your paper somewhere. There's somewhere on there that says how to find IQR or interquartile range. It's Q3 minus Q1. And I hope that we know what Q3 and Q1 mean, because I feel like we talk about it a little bit each day and I still have like blank stares. So what does the Q3 mean? The median between the minimum and the maximum, is that what you said? So the median and the maximum. So that's our median of the upper half. I'll kind of simplify it. And then Q3 is, or not Q3, Q1 is good, the median of the lower half. Or some of you are saying between the minimum and the normal median, that's also correct. All right, so in order to use this formula, I have to know what my Q3 and Q1 are. What do I have to identify before I identify that?
Everybody, we are currently in a modified lockdown. Please be sure.
So before you identify Q3 and Q1, what do you have to identify first? Q2, good, which is the median of the whole thing. What is my median of the whole thing? 13, good. So that means you guys knew to put your data in order. If you didn't, make sure you make that adjustment. The middle number of this data is 13. Now, that splits it into my lower half and upper half. Never include like your median in your halves, if that makes sense. So I have 2 in my lower half. So you have to take the average of them. What's the average of 5 and 6? 5.5 is correct. So add them together, divided by 2. And what's the median of 18 and 18? Or average, you could say. Good. And if you're like, how are they doing that so fast? You just notice patterns over time. If you're taking the average of the same two numbers, it should be the same number. But otherwise, just add them together, divide them by 2, you get 18. So then when you plug that into your IQR formula, and I'll just throw it over here, I have Q3, which is 18, minus Q1, which is 5.5, and what's 18 minus 5.5? Close. Verify with the calculator. 12.5. So remember, use the calculator. Just because you can do the SAT and ACT without a calculator doesn't mean you should. All right, questions? Now let's do the MAD. So mean absolute deviation. And it's kind of nice, they actually already identified the mean for you. So if you want, you can kind of mimic the table that we had in our previous examples. That's also on your note sheet. You don't need the numbers to be in order, but you can put them in order if you want. But my mean, we said, is, there's my data value. My mean of my data is 12, because that's what they already told us. Now we need to find the deviation from the mean. So like, how far away is 5 away from 12? 7. And if you're doing it like how we did it in the table, it would be 5 minus 12, which is negative 7. And then you take the absolute value, which is 7, right? So I'll show you for completeness. All right. But then what's 18 minus 12? Good. What's the absolute value of 6? Good. And then 6 minus 12? Absolute value of negative 6. 18 minus 12? Absolute value of 6. And 13 minus 12? Absolute value of 1. Good. And then when you're doing your mean absolute deviation, because that's what this part is, I'm just abbreviating, we took the absolute value of the deviation. You're adding up this last column. So I can do this in my head. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19, plus 7 is 26. But use a calculator on your quiz. 26. And what will I be dividing by this time? 5, because I have 5 data values. This time I do need to use my calculator. And it is 5.2. Good. Questions? Anyone get it right the first time? Good. Anyone else? All right. Well, that's how you find MAD and IQR. That tells you how spread out your data is. So then